Thanks for tuning in to Written on the Edge, Season 7, Episode 31. I'm Vance Bastian, here with my co-host, S.A. Baz Collins.
Howdy!
And we're really glad you're here with us. On today's show, Ellie Johnson will be joining us to discuss her novel. We'll be following that with a review of The Lake from Amazon Prime, and then Baz and I will share what's held our attention this week. So if you like hearing updates from queer content creators, support us on Patreon, hit our merch store, like and subscribe, whether you listen in audio podcasts or YouTube. We're everywhere. But now on to our guest. Ellie Johnson paddled the 450-mile Thelon River with 3 other women at the age of 17. Her novel is based in part on that canoe trip, as well as her real-life experiences growing up as a gay woman. Ellie is a recent graduate of the University of Minnesota and lives in St. Paul. Ellie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's really good to be here.
Our pleasure. So, when you were canoeing 450 miles, where was the spark to write a story? Where did that come from?
And boy, your muse is adventurous.
Right?
I mean, honestly, like I grew up on the water canoeing. We have a property in northern Minnesota that's on an island. It's in like this incredibly beautiful remote area of Minnesota that we have to drive like 4.5 hours from the cities to get to. And so I grew up on the water and doing these progressively longer trips with this camp I was going to. And this was kind of, the big trip you went on before you went to college. And it was like about a month and a half in like one of the farthest northern regions you can reach. And it was always just kind of something that I did out of personal passion. Like everyone asked me like, oh, did you journal a lot on that trip? And I was like, no, I didn't even journal that much. I did a lot of like free writing, more like poetry, essays, like stream of consciousness writings. It wasn't really until I got back and I started telling some of these adventure stories to people, in particular my dad, who's kind of the only one who really had the patience to go through all the flora, fauna, and routes and all these different like features of whitewater and stuff with me. And he was the one who kind of saw the value in particularly the Thelon for being like this incredibly unique space to set a story. And so my first year at college, and I went to college for English, I was in Vermont, and he calls me, he's like, oh, I like had this great idea for a story. What if like 2 girls go into the wilderness and like one of them dies, the other has to like carry her body out? And I was like, I'm in my first semester of an English degree. I do not have the time, energy, and to write for fun. Let alone like work on a story with you who's, so far away at this point. And he's like, well, fine, I'll just write it myself. And he produces the short story that he really enjoyed writing and wanted to get more into the headspace of the characters. And that bore more and more conversations, like about how these characters would come to be in the Thelon, what their relationship would be like while they were there, what my relationship was like with the women I went on trail with, and what it's like to just like be weirdly intense roommates for a month and a half. And like all those conversations and now like editing passages, going over the route I went on, it like started to become a fully fleshed out story. That, I mean, honestly, my big contribution was mostly like being the editor less than the writer of this story in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But he did such a good job like carrying the feeling of these characters and this river that is almost a character in itself that we worked so hard to capture.
Right.
Sorry, I guess that's really not an answer to the question you asked.
No, I mean, I'll circle back in a second, but we should probably highlight your dad's work as well. Kurt Johnson has other writings as well outside of this. It's not like this was his first, right?
No, this was not his first book. This is his first, published, non-self-published book. This is, I think, the fifth, if you include his memoir that no one's read, book he's written. And, actually he has another book that he's working on doing a secondary round of publishing that's not self-published, on a book that I personally really love about his time in Las Vegas. But yeah, he's the one who, like, since he was my age and going to college and like me, really wanted to be a writer, but there wasn't any money in it. And around my father passed, and so he wanted to focus on other pursuits.
Understood. So you came home with these wonderful experiences from your trip, and the idea for the book was his then, and you were like, okay, I'm tagging along.
More or less. It was kind of like by the time it became a short story, I realized I had a lot to say about that short story.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this character wouldn't say this. This wouldn't happen on trail. I remember one of like the first things I really took issue with this was kind of when we first started truly collaborating together to create this story, was when I said, I don't think two women would meet like on trail and fall in love and decide to get together on trail. I was like, I don't think there's anything more unsexual and tense than the beginning of a camping trip. And so I just found that mildly unbelievable that two people would sleep together for the first time on trail
Mm-hmm.
after going in as friends. And so then that got into like kind of this mindset of the characters, what was going on behind the scenes, what is their story, like how do you create drama and dialogue with only two people in the wilderness and ultimately only one person in the wilderness.
Right.
And that became like more about having these conversations to flesh out these characters and write them together as like gay women, as women my age.
Sure. Had you come out to him before this canoe trip?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
I came out to him, it would have been probably my sophomore year of high school, and this was the summer after my senior year of high school.
Okay.
And I had a serious girlfriend by that point too. I had a serious girlfriend that I broke up with actually right before I went on this trip. And she went on a similar trip, but like a backpacking one the same year. And, you know, he was aware of my sexuality. And I think honestly, he was a little less shocked when I came out than my mother was. Because my mother was like, oh, like she's dating boys and like doing all this stuff. And my dad was like, yeah, but Stephanie, you should really see the signs. And so he was everlasting supportive. I don't think it ever really like bothered him when I came out so much as just kind of having to reevaluate some expectations. But I'm sure that like he was honestly the one person in my family who seemed the most just kind of, oh, nothing's changed.
So did that make it easier to have the discussions with him about the relationship, the type of relationship, and the activities these women would do on this trip?
No. Oh God. No one ever wants to talk about sex with their parents.
I was wondering about that.
And no father in particular ever wants to go to their daughter and say like, hey, tell me about your relationships. Tell me about, you know, sexuality, intimacy, like abuse, tension. Like, tell me about all these things that I'm not even sure I want to know the answers to. And it was all in his pursuit of honest characters and, you know, maybe even like connection. We definitely got closer having these conversations, but I took what I saw as an honest request at building a character, you know, thoughtfully. And I tried to just respond with truth, contemplation, and just wrote fact to a certain extent. And my girlfriend, who I'm still with, my longtime partner, she sat in on like so many of the conversations and gave some of her own input as like someone that we weren't related to in her own upbringing in a different world. But I mean, really, I think it was like, yeah, it's tense and it's uncomfortable. And sometimes you look up and you realize, oh, I'm trying to like explain like some of these first times I like made out with women and had sex with women. And then my dad's gonna take this and write like a sex scene, write a romance. And that was weird for a while, but then we just started editing it together, talking about like what felt authentic and what didn't. And I mean, I give him a lot of credit for him not making it weird and him just focusing on this idea of a character and what makes a character honest. And I think that like that's been a lot of some of the more positive feedback we've gotten, especially from women my age, gay women, is that these characters felt truthful to them.
That's fantastic. And kudos to your dad. Please congratulate him from me.
Well, seriously, I congratulated him for me. I was like, oh, thanks for dealing with this, man.
So let's talk about the Barrens specifically. What should people expect when they pick it up? And do you have one you can hold up?
Yeah, I do. So this is the Barrens. I cannot be happier with the cover.
It's a gorgeous cover.
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased. Thank you, Arcade. But I think what I want people to expect is to want to read it quickly. It's not a very long book, and it's an adventure story, and I think you want to read it over like a cabin weekend, a trip, even an airplane ride, somewhere where you can like sit down in the span of 3 days, feel the story, let it wash over you, and then kind of come out the other side. And it's also not a truly lighthearted story, but it doesn't have to be dark. I think some people read it and they're like, oh God, it starts out really intense. And I'm like, yeah, but then it's got to pace like a river, you know? It's a lot to get into, but soon you realize you're waking up every day and just getting through the river. I don't know.
Perfect.
And I also think that I want people to expect to feel this environment and let themselves feel it. Read it somewhere out in the wilderness.
Nice. Would you recommend it for folks who are not gay women?
Yeah, entirely.
Good.
Yeah, of course I would. I mean, because I'm a humanist at heart. I believe that like one of the big purposes of literature is to share experiences.
Amen.
I don't think that there's any type of literature that should be read or consumed by only one type of person.
No, I think it's exactly the kind of opposite situation. The more they're exposed, the more they realize how people are people, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, how insulated would our experiences be if we like only ever wanted to see through the eyes of someone who experienced the world the same way? That's what's in particular so incredible about literature, is it is so much like through a lens, so to speak. So yeah, I want straight people, older people who have never been out in the wilderness before to pick up this book and to experience some of these things, whether they challenge them, whether they excite them and want to explore canoeing or explore their sexuality. I don't care. But like, yeah, I want everyone to be open to new experiences, and certainly open to someone else's experience that they're trying to share with you.
Right. Well, I think this is one of the most important aspects of storytelling.
Yeah. And, storytelling is a big part of the book. It's a big part of my life. And I think that's how we learn each other as people.
So what's up next for you?
Trying to do more camping, writing. I'm still trying to work on this, like Stephen King's book on writing. It talks a lot about this idea of like writing as a work. Sit down, do your 1,000 words a day, like make it your business. And to some extent, I'm still working on that. But I'm also working on a book that's still in the camping vein. I'm trying to finish up a book that's kind of focuses on like more of like East Coast camping culture, like cabins, archery, stuff like that. And I went to college in Vermont, which is right on the border with like French Canada, Quebec, and Montreal. It's like an hour away. I wanted to focus on like this idea of like kind of a very East Coast traditional, like 20 style summer camp that's like right on the border with Quebec. And so it has like some French influence and stuff like that. It's honestly just been fun to read about the history of the area and like lodge culture and camp culture on the East Coast. It's so trippy. It's like Dirty Dancing, which is one of my favorite movies. And I'm like, why was there for years this like whole like family cabin culture, and why'd we lose it? It's fun. It looked awesome.
Have you ever watched
in northern Minnesota called Camp du Nord? It's like a family camp in that fashion.
Have you ever watched The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
Yeah.
In the later seasons, they go to the Catskills for the same thing.
Oh, really? Did she do like the comedy circuit thing? Because that was like a big deal.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's,
Oh yeah.
It would like have the power of like Vegas.
Season 2.
Yep.
Okay, so I like only like watched like the end of season 1, I think. So I definitely have to watch the second season.
Need to watch season 2.
Yes.
It's like, how weird is that we lost like this whole venue for comedians and stand up. And just because we decided we weren't into going camping as a family anymore.
Yeah.
So which social is the best for people to follow you to keep up with the updates on all these projects?
I'm on Instagram at EllieJ418. My father is on Instagram at Kurt Johnson Books. He has a website, kurtjohnsonbooks.com. As well, my mother has a cookbook coming out, True North Cabin Cookbook.
That's fantastic.
A random plug. Her name is Stephanie Hansen. She's on the radio and does podcasts under Stephanie's Dish. And that True North Cabin Cookbook has a lot of recipes and stories from my childhood and family. So just thought I'd throw it out there.
There you go.
That comes out September 13th, I believe.
Nice.
So that's my plug for her. Otherwise, yeah, follow me on Instagram, my dad on Instagram, follow our websites, and keep on the lookout for something new in the future.
That's awesome. Any final words of wisdom?
Thank you so much for having us, and everyone go outside today. Go paddle, try canoeing, get on the water. I think water is healing, therapeutic, and if you've never been into boating before, figure out a small way to get into it.
Perfect. We'd like to extend a huge thank you to Ellie Johnson for being with us. Ellie, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about these artists, please like and subscribe to get the alerts for new episodes. Now, on to our review.
Welcome back, gals, gays, and theys. We are doing a review this week of Amazon Prime's The Lake. You want to tell people what it's about?
So the official write-up, Justin returns from living abroad in the hope of reconnecting with the biological daughter that he gave up for adoption. His plans go awry when he finds out his father left the family cottage to his stepsister.
Wow, he left a whole college.
I know, right?
I didn't see that series. Can I take a break and go back and watch that series?
Sure, go for it. That is essentially the truth, although it leaves a lot out, like the nature of all the relationships, which is twisted and convoluted, but kind of fun. What'd you think?
Not a fan.
No?
No.
What turned you off?
And I'll tell you why. And as an example of where I'm coming from, I'm going to cite the movie Big Eden. I'm going to cite Northern Exposure. I'm going to cite Schitt's Creek. All of which have decent queer representation. Even Northern Exposure back in the 90s had a gay couple who ran a B&B, and they were the only normal couple in the entire town of Sicily. Let's put it this way. As it got to episodes 6, 7, and 8, I was clicking through 30 seconds at a clip. And 90% of my ire was drawn on the fact that I didn't care about a single character, not one. Well, maybe Tessa, but she was smart enough to get out. I thought it was, I get the sassy little queer kid who has seemingly knowledge beyond human existence, but it's become a trope. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have young Sheldon, who's not queer necessarily because he's the character of another character that grows up in Big Bang. But that trope has been played, and I found it not believable. I found it really oh, okay. And then the writing itself was trying so hard to be clever at every turn that it became annoying to me. It's like, God damn it. Not every line has to be, you know, but every line was. And nobody was kind to nobody else. Even to the very end, there was still this bickering kind of angsty, and I was like, I don't care. But burn the fucking cabin down. I don't care. Because you people just drive me nuts. And then you look at a movie like Big Eden, which has just as diverse personalities, but you were enveloped and you grew to like the characters.
I'm going to push back a little bit. Justin and Billy did care for each other much in the end.
They did, but goddamn, what a fucking winding road. I mean, I don't, and then the whole thing between her and Killian, I'm like, I just didn't care. I got to let's put it this way, and I know I never released the review, and I doubt we'll ever put it out, but I'm going to cite Call Me By Your Name and how much I love that movie and how much you did not like that. That's where I am with The Lake. I'm literally there. Yeah. It was not working for me. It was just, and it's like like I said, as I got to 6, 7, and 8, I'm like 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds. I didn't care what was happening in between. I'm just like, let's get to the end. I got to get to the end. And then when I got to the end and supposedly Justin and his stepsister, that they're fighting over this cottage, cabin, whatever, I was like, then they have a new photograph and suddenly they're joining hands. Okay, formulaic. It just didn't surprise me. It didn't thrill me. It didn't.
Can I tell you what did surprise me?
Huh?
Can I tell you what did surprise me?
Go ahead.
Nobody in the community had a problem with Justin and Riley being gay. Nobody.
Or
it was
Opal.
A very open, or Opal. Well, Opal being queer but young and whatever. I'm also with you on the Opal was unbelievable in pretty much every aspect.
Yeah, I mean, the kid did great. I'm not knocking the performance. Yeah. All of the actors acquitted themselves beautifully. So,
but what I did like was that they hinted at a past where there was problem with gay folks, where when Justin was a child and the lake was not accepting. So it showed a generational change towards acceptance, which isn't, they didn't beat anybody over the head with it, but it was there.
But I'll color that with Julia Stiles' character playing the victim of, oh my God, and I was the one who turned it around, and I was the one, I'm like, bitch, please. I mean, that was a choice you made. If you dealt with any heat, it was because of a choice you made. So I don't give her a break on the victimhood. No. It's weird. Every turn that they made, I'm like, what? So yeah, it just not for me. Not for me. Not when I have Northern Exposure, when I have Big Eden, when I have Schitt's Creek, who all have characters that you may not like or identify with, but the way they handled them was much more believable and realistic. To see Julia Stiles' character just be so frickin' over the top, Maisie May with all of her shenanigans, and it's like, oh, bitch, did you just sit down and not do a fucking thing for the rest of these episodes because you're irritating me? And I like Julia Stiles. I like her a lot, but I could not stand her in this show. I was like, she had no redeeming quality, none. And I know that there are characters in shows that can be like that. I mean, you had the astronaut, Bernard, I think his name was, in Northern Exposure. I never really liked him. And he was not one of my favorite characters. But I knew he was necessary, but he also wasn't contriving the plot every 5 seconds for each episode. So that's where it lost me.
Did you expect a lot of realism from this show?
And a lot of what?
Realism.
I expected some. I didn't get any.
I got the impression that the entire show is being told through Justin's perspective as sort of he's the observer, so everything has got that little older gay boy, I should be drinking a martini and being catty color over everything.
which is a trope I hate. I hate that trope. I hate catty gay men when when all it is that every 3 seconds. No. Bitch, stop seeing the world like that because you're part of the problem of why our community infights. Stop that shit. And that's one of the reasons why I like Tessa. When she showed up, I'm like, oh, great. I love her. And I liked her little relationship thing with Billy, bringing her along. I love Billy and I like Tessa. But Billy just seemed like, okay, in the beginning, she was just this entitled teenager who was just, riding her, millennial, string, you know, I
manifesto.
Just, yeah. And I'm just
But
like,
that's exactly who she was supposed to be, and she was supposed to have grown from that. And I think she did.
maybe. I just,
It's okay. You're not required to like it. I watch it. I voted with my dollars because I want to see more queer programming in general.
I do want to see more queer programming, so I'm glad I watched it. So they got their count numbers in, so I'm happy about that. But could not care less about season 2. If I hear they're starting, I'm gonna go up to that freaking forest. I'll set the goddamn thing on fire just because they piss me off.
Hey, leave my environment out of this.
Look, if my backyard's burning, all bets are off.
All right.
Now, what's interesting is my ratings are not going to be harsh, but my emotive quotient is going to affect the personal overall. So,
I understand. Go for it.
All right. Overall production, I give a 3. It was fine. Didn't knock my socks off. Didn't detract. The screenplay, I give a 2 because it just, I don't care who wrote it, and there were different writers for each episode. They were consistent, so I'll give them that. That's why I'm giving them a 2. But I just didn't believe half of the characterizations. It just got monotonous. Sound lighting score, I'll move it back up to a 3.5 because I think they did a good job there. Art direction, it was really more location because it all took place at a lake. So beautiful scenery, beautiful location. So I give that a 4. Cast, I give it a 5. They all acquitted themselves. They did their jobs. They performed admirably. Although the woman playing, what was her name? Una, or what was the Swedish lady? Ulrika. Is that Ulrika?
Ulrika.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her Swedish accent. I'm like, I know Swedes from Sweden. They don't talk like that. I was like, I expected the chef to come in from the Muppets. You know?
As a character, she appropriated so many cultures it wasn't even funny.
Yes, it was. Okay. Anyways, but the cast 5 because they were all very good actors, even down to little Declan who played Opal. Great. Direction a 3 because somebody should have said no. Somebody should have said no, we're not doing this. No, and nobody did. Queer themes. I'm gonna give it a 3. Nothing shocked me, including once I saw what Opal was as a character, I was kind of like, okay, gay young Sheldon. Okay, got it. And so my personal overall, I'm going to, it would average out to about a 3.5, but I'm going to give it a 3. It's got a big meh for me.
All right. I gave production quality, and I'm going to put sound lighting score together with it. Gave them a 4.5 because they shot outdoor lake scenes with a light and a lighting filter that is what it feels like up here. And that was beautiful. It was stunning. So production quality, they threw some money at it. They got the right locations. They actually filmed in those locations. There weren't sets. So I liked that aspect of it very much. Like you, script screenplay, I gave it a 3. I understand where they were going with the storytelling filter, being the sort of catty, snarky, hide behind the bitchy comments. It's just not my style of storytelling either. Art direction costuming, I bumped that back up to a 4 because even when they weren't just in their lake attire, like say, I don't know, the talent show, it was obvious a costuming person had some fun. Casting, like you, gave it a 5. I thought the cast was brilliant. They did exactly what was asked of them. Directing, I brought that down to a 4 because, again, I think the directors did capture the feel of the snarkiness and cattiness.
There was consistency, yes.
Right, exactly. And someone was paying attention, even if it's not my style of storytelling. Queer themes presented, I actually gave it a 4 because I had never encountered the gay guy who'd accidentally gotten a best friend pregnant and put the child up for adoption, but stayed in the child's life as a distant parent figure the entire time, at the request of the adopted parents. I thought that was a new gay dynamic that I had never seen before. And actually, that was the concept that drew me to watch this in the first place. So my personal overall was a 4.
Okay. I think that, one of the things I will give people that I will do as a closing statement on it is that the current rating on IMDb is 5.9 out of 10. So it's just over the middle mark. But you go to Rotten Tomatoes and it's at an 84% approval rating from the audience, nothing from the critics. There's evidently not enough reviews of it from the critics. So who knows if it'll get a second season, because if the critics aren't taking notice, that's usually a bellwether. So, I mean, there's the disparity. So The Lake has a much lower percentage score than you have with Rotten Tomatoes. So it's kind of an interesting mix. So it reflects in the way you and I see the same story here. So I'm putting that out there as a comparison. So. All right, moving on to our Who Won the Week and What Are We On About? So, what are we on about for you this week?
I don't know. Nothing I want to watch has started yet. I should preface that comment by saying that my dad also caught COVID recently, and so it's been a week of, do I need to do their grocery shopping
so
again?
That's what you're on about.
I guess. Do I need to keep them isolated so that I can, care for them? I mean, he's doing fine. I just want to put that out there also. He's just tired. So yay for vaccinations and whatever. But yeah, I haven't seen anything new. However, I'm looking forward to things that are starting up again in August, or new things that are starting. I'm not going to talk about one of my favorite green superheroes who talks to the audience ever, finally coming to the screen. Not going to mention her yet.
Okay.
But she's coming.
Okay.
How about you?
What I'm on about this week, it's another YouTube thing, but I think it's very interesting because it bears out what I have thought all along. But I told people about in a previous episode or two about the Channel 1420, which is Russians going around two Russian guys going around and interviewing Russian people on a certain controversial topic and polling on the street. And to watch, if you watch their channel episodes from right after because they were doing it before the war was going on. But if you watch their episodes from that point when the war broke out and the invasion began to recent, you can see a definite progression of self-censoring as time wears on in their comments. You get a lot more of, I don't want to respond to this, or, can we talk about something? You get a lot of that as the further you go along. They still get people to comment, so it's great that you get to hear some Russian thoughts, and it's interesting that some of the generational things you would expect, the older people being much more pro-Soviet and being fine with what's going on, it's actually surprising to see a number of older Russians not buy into the propaganda. It's actually very interesting. So there are some surprises on that side. Now, what's interesting, and the reason why I'm bringing this all back up again, I found a like channel on the Ukrainian side, and it's really, really exemplary of why the Ukrainians are fighting. To see those interviews on the streets happen is almost like night and day. You see the careful thought, even though they're angry about what the Russians are doing, you see a conscientious mulling over the topic at hand and giving great answers. And they even give snarky answers. One of the questions was recently, what are you planning on doing once the war is over? And one guy answered, and every answer he had was, I'm going to McDonald's. And then one of the interviewers said, is there a McDonald's in this city? And he said, I don't know, but I'll find one. Just to stick it to the Russians that he can go, which I thought was funny. But it's really kind of interesting. So the channel's called Se Ukraini, and it's YouTube channel where they interview people in Ukraine during the wartime that's going on in cities, obviously, that haven't been heavily targeted. But it's really interesting to see the dynamics. And if you watch the two channels, 1420 in Russia and watch, say, Ukraine on their channel, and you can see the different dynamics, and you can see why the Ukrainians are fighting so hard to keep their democracy such as it is. It still has a lot to go through. They've got a lot of corruption still. They've got a lot of things that they need to handle, and that I'm sure they want to get to. But they are where they are. But it's just amazing to see the two populations struggling with the same topics and to hear the two different perspectives. It's really, really fascinating. So that's what I'm on about this week. Who won the week for you?
Forbes.
Oh,
published an article on MSN Money that was perfectly timed, obvious, on purpose. So they were writing about the recent Mega Million billion-dollar jackpot, and I'm going to extract a paragraph to read for you. The estimated cash option will come out to $602.5 million, and the prize would be subject to an initial 24% federal tax withholding, or roughly another $144.6 million. The winner would also owe additional taxes at higher brackets, up to the 37% top federal marginal tax bracket. For a single taxpayer with no additional income, no dependents, and no itemized deductions, the total additional tax would be another $78 million, leaving the winner with only $379.6 million before state taxes. So you'd see less than 30% of that actual jackpot. And the reason that's interesting,
unless you take it as an annuity.
Annuities are different, I understand, but most people don't.
Yeah,
because there's no trust the lottery system will last long enough to receive all that.
Yeah,
which is an interesting statement.
Or you'll live long enough.
And I say it on purpose. Well, that too, but the reason there's no trust, so I started digging into what Forbes wasn't saying, and what they were highlighting is where this money's going. The initial lottery promise is that this money would be funding schools. I know that $500 million of this lottery ticket is not going to fund any school. Where's it going?
Very well done.
That's Excellent. Who won my week because
lift the rock.
Where's that money going?
Lift the rock. See the roaches run. Lift the rock. Okay, yep. I totally get it. My one who won the week is a very bittersweet one. My who won the week is Nichelle Nichols, who passed away yesterday as we record this, and I just broke my pin. Okay. Anyways, she was a trailblazer. I had the incredible honor to walk next to her going to the San Diego Convention Center during Comic-Con, and we had a lovely chat as we were walking, making our way to the convention center. And she didn't have any bodyguards or anybody around. She was just walking around amongst the people. Just a gracious lady, so kind, so thoughtful, very engaging, not afraid of her fans. I would assume, they all are pretty respectful of who the queen, the goddess is. But I found her to be just so warm that her passing meant something to me. And it's funny because my sister came up and she was always a huge Lieutenant Uhura fan when we were watching Star Trek as kids. And she came up and told me, and I knew that she had passed, and I didn't say it flippantly, but I said, well, she was having a hard time health-wise in the end, so, it's probably best that she doesn't suffer anymore. And I think my sister was a little taken back that I didn't have a more emotive reaction, but that was because I was still processing. I was still trying to come to grips with that passing. I mean, out of the entire cast, and I've met some of them, and Leonard Nimoy was one of my big favorites. And Nichelle really, really did tug. I hope, we're recording this on a Monday morning, I hope that Rachel Maddow tonight will actually say something about it because she's a big space geek. And so I'm hoping she will do some small tribute to Nichelle Nichols tonight. But yeah, my own personal experience with her is she was a lovely, lovely woman, and just so gracious and so engaging. We lost a big, bright light. So she won my week just because of all the gifts she gave to the people around the world. That's it.
And on that note of reflection, Written on the Edge is produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.roguepodcast.com. If you enjoy learning about new artists, like Ellie Johnson, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for these new episodes. Tune in next week for your queer media fix. Bye-bye!
What's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.
Oh, and one quick thing I want to do a shout out to. We're recording this on Monday, August 1st. My birthday is the next day, August 2nd. And I share my birthday with a guest of our show, a family member of our show who's been on a couple times, Edmund Manning, author Edmund Manning. Great author, fabulous personality. We miss you, Edmund. You need to come back on the show and tell us what you're up to. I want to hear more about Professor Waffles, that's his cat, and his shenanigans and doings, because he has some great pictures he posts about what Professor Waffles is doing from time to time. And so big shout out to my birthday twinsy, my actual birthday twinsy. We were born on the exact same day. So big shout out to him. Happy birthday.